Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Happy Friday. So in today's video what I wanted to do is get Yinka back on again and talk about how we actually joined our finances. Now the reason why I wanted to do this video was because I did a poll on Instagram asking you guys if you would actually join your finances if you were married, for example, and some of the responses were really interesting. A lot of you guys said that you would probably join things like just bills and then separate everything else out. Some of you guys said that you would separate everything. So I thought it would be good if we just talk about how we joined our finances, talk about the pros and cons of joining finances, and actually discuss whether people should join their finances. But also, if you guys don't know who Yinka is, I did actually have him on a video talking about how we actually managed to save for our wedding. So definitely check that video out if you haven't already. I will of course link that up here for you and in the description below. But without further ado, let's just get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is talk about our initial thoughts around joining finances. So Yinka, do you want to start with your initial thoughts, whether you wanted to join finances in the beginning? What was your thought process like?
I had no problems joining finances. I think because we were getting married anyway, so everything was going to join anyway.
Yeah, so I think I was in like the same mindset. I think actually before I started on this personal finance journey, I had always thought that maybe married couples had maybe some separate things in terms of their finances and maybe didn't join everything. But when I was going through the personal finance journey, I think I just wanted to join everything, particularly if you had like similar goals where we want to be financially independent and things like that. It was really important. But I think we did have a discussion in terms of where the finances would go. So whether we would actually put both of our salaries into one account or if we would still keep the same separate accounts and then have the salaries coming into our separate accounts. So what were your thoughts on that? Because we had plenty of discussions around that. I think
we did have different views on it. So originally I didn't see a point in having my salary going into a joint account when it was really just going into my account. Fiona obviously thought that everything should go into the joint account, so there was a little bit of an issue there. But at the end of the day, I think after some time getting closer to the marriage, personally I didn't see a big difference in doing it one way or the other, so we decided to put our salaries into our joint account.
Yeah, so basically I think he was happy to just kind of have our separate accounts first and then having the salaries go into it, and then we would just put money into the pot, like in terms of bills and things like that. Whereas I think I felt a bit more comfortable just having both of our salaries going into one joint account. For me, the reason why was because I just wanted it to be quite transparent in terms of us being married, and I think I just had the mindset of if everything is going into one account, then that's basically our money. There's no like his and hers money, if that makes sense. So that was kind of my thought process, and we did have a few discussions around it, but I think we pretty much settled on just actually having the joint account. But we've also got some things that are going to be separate, which we will talk about in the rest of the video.
If you're liking this video right now, give it a thumbs up, because as my girl says right here,
it's free. Okay, so now I think I want to talk about the pros of joining finances. So what are the pros for you personally?
I'd say saving. Saving is a lot easier. I mean, you've got two incomes coming together as one, saving for one goal. So saving becomes easier, becomes quicker. That's the big one for me. How about you?
I think the biggest thing for me is just transparency, I would say. I guess the first thing is that it's nice knowing that like it's our money and I don't need to think about it being separate, especially if I was to, for example, stop working, or if I don't know, if I was pregnant, for example, and maybe I had lost that income. I think I would feel a bit worried about like if you then had your own income coming in and I didn't really have much income coming in, then I'd be like, oh, I now need to pay my half of the bills. I don't know how that would work. So I think I kind of had that bit of a worry, but I think the fact that we've joined everything together and now it's our money, it then makes me feel like, okay, even if I was to lose my income or if I was to go on maternity leave, for example, that it's still going to be our money anyway. So I wouldn't really be fussed at that. And obviously just knowing that, you know, things that we pay for, I'm aware of it and you're aware of it. And we can then have those discussions as well, which is good.
And also it builds trust. So it lets me understand how Veronia values and spends money compared to how I do as well. So I may particularly like buying clothes or trainers, for example. Veronia might particularly like spending money on food. So her kind of priorities in terms of where she spends her money would be different from mine. Just coming together and working together towards having a balanced and stable marriage and respecting each other's priorities and preferences, but also compromising as well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I would say is it kind of just makes things simple in terms of paying for things like bills. So when it comes to like our rent and our utility bills, we don't have to just split it evenly and say like, oh, you're paying for that, you're paying for that. It kind of just comes out of the account, and that's all we just need to think about. So I think that's quite good as well.
Yeah. And there's a level of fairness as well, because most of the time people in couples aren't earning the exact same amount after tax, after student loans, etc. So there's no point in thinking, all right, cool, I'm going to pay this, I'm going to pay half the rent, I'm going to be left with X amount of money.
Yeah.
You're only going to be left with Y amount of money, and then you do whatever you want with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's why I find it interesting, just in terms of we have similar levels of income, but it's not the same. But if I was to then work part-time and only earn half of what you earn, if I then had to still pay for half the rent, that means I don't have enough money to do anything else, do I? So yeah, I think that's why it's a lot easier for us and why it makes sense. Okay, so now we've spoken about the pros, I do want to talk about the cons as well of joining finances. So what are your thoughts on the cons?
I guess larger purchases. So I may want a PS5, but yeah, if I just went to Argos or something and just bought it, and you get that notification with the joint account.
£500 just taken
£500 coming out. Exactly. So there's stuff like that. Instead of going to buy things or larger purchases just outright, then it's discussion has to be had with that, which is not necessarily a con. It just means that I don't have that much independence in making those decisions to buy larger price items.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that's maybe a bit difficult is if you are in debt, or if one of you is in debt. So for example, in my case, this happened before we got married, but obviously I had my car loan and I also had my overdraft. I think bringing that into the marriage may have been a little bit difficult, because I think the question would have been, you know, because we are one, do we now tackle the debt together?
Yeah, of course, but I prefer if that was sorted out beforehand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think even if you brought on the debt, it would probably be now our debt, and so we'd have to tackle it if that happened. But yeah, obviously I didn't really want to bring the debt into our marriage. I think it could have probably caused a bit of strain. So, yeah, so I obviously made sure that I paid that off. So if you're new to my channel and you haven't seen those videos, I would definitely make sure they're linked in the description below for you so that you can check it out. And then the other con I would say is probably that it can potentially cause arguments, maybe with how we decide how we want to spend on miscellaneous, or just other things in terms of maybe how much we want to save, how much we want to put into our investments. If we don't agree on that, because we now have this joint goal, and because it's putting money together, we kind of then have to decide what we want to do with that money, if that makes sense. So I think you're likely to have more arguments just because it's now not only my decision to decide, you know, what I want to do with the money, it's our decision. So we have to work through that and make sure our goals are aligned, basically.
Even thinking back on the ISAs, you have a low risk tolerance, so I have a high risk tolerance.
Yes.
Me, money comes, money goes. So, I mean, I'm not reckless with the money, but if I think there's a good chance of things going well, then I'm not afraid to put the money down for it. So I think it's important that our ISAs are separate.
Yeah, that's even another thing actually. Let's even talk about that, because I think that's probably one of the other cons in terms of joining finances. So in terms of how we invest our money, obviously we have like a set amount that we put into both of our ISAs, but because it's not that we have different goals, but we have different risk tolerances, and because he has a much higher risk tolerance, some of the things he's like thinking of investing in, I'm thinking, why? Not why, but I'm thinking I personally wouldn't necessarily do it. But remembering that it's also our money, so I also care for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some similar investments, some ETFs, a few individual stocks, I think. But yeah, I'm seeing value in different things. Rania's seeing value in other things, and hopefully they both work out in the end. So
Yeah, so I think it's just, yeah, understanding both of your risk tolerance as well. But I think because we basically do 50-50 for those investments, it's not too bad, because even if he wants to invest in something that's maybe a bit more risky, because I also have 50% of that money being put towards investments that aren't as risky, I'm a lot more comfortable with that, I think. And I think that's fair for both of us. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is, what exactly did we join?
Everything. I think everything, no?
It's pretty much...
Unless I'm mistaken.
It's pretty much everything. I mean, the only thing separate that we've had is like a bit of spending money that we have. But we basically joined everything. So that came into savings, investments, our emergency fund, groceries, petrol.
Run that's a budget, so...
Yeah.
All the money is accounted for. So.
Yeah.
We join everything. We know where all the money goes to.
And you probably would have seen my video talking about our budget for the month. So that's actually our first budget together. So I will link that up here for you and in the description below so that you can check it out. But yeah, essentially, I think we just joined everything apart from, I guess small spending money. But even things like personal care, we ended up joining.
But like things like ISAs and that are separate. But
yeah.
I mean, the money that goes to the ISAs, it comes from our joint accounts.
Yeah, and we allocate the same amount to both of our ISAs, but what we invest in is kind of separate.
Up to us.
Yeah, basically. So
you see who does the best.
Yeah. So whose returns are better at the moment in terms of our portfolios?
I don't know. I haven't seen yours in a while.
Really? I've seen yours and mine. And then the other thing I wanted to answer is, I guess, the question on how did we practically join our finances. So do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, we made a joint account, changed where our salaries were going from in terms of our personal account. This was after we got married, but from our personal account into the joint account, so all the money was going into one account. And yeah, we budgeted from there in terms of where we're going to be putting the money. I mean, we already had that joint account before we were married, so everything like saving for the wedding was there, our investment money was there, emergency fund is there, all the things related to the car is there.
Basically, before we got married, we'd already opened that joint account, then put money into, I guess, the wedding budget, which is something we've mentioned before, but we also then started putting money towards our goals so that it was an easier transition once we got married to just, I guess, put our salaries into it and then just basically pay all of our bills and everything like that from that joint account. So for us, I think it was a bit easier in terms of the transition because we had already started joining our finances. Now I know not everyone's going to start joining their finances before they're married, but I think because we'd already put money for the wedding together and we already knew we were going to start saving and investing for different things, we kind of just started putting the money together. But essentially we could have either done it after the marriage or before the marriage as well.
Yeah, I mean, either or, depending on your preference.
Yeah, and whether you actually trust that you're going to get married as well.
Yeah, and you don't want to be joining these things up before you're sure, sorry. Yeah,
we had to be sure before we actually opened that joint account.
Yeah, it was pretty easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty laid back with that stuff, so it's only that I had to be sure.
Yes. Yes, and I had to make sure we had a budget for everything, as most of you will know. Okay, and then the other question I want to answer is whether we think people should actually join their finances. So, do you want to go first?
Yeah, that's the answer. Yeah, I think they should, especially... Actually, no, let me take that back. They should if they plan to get married, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because marriage is two people becoming one, everything gets joined together, so I feel like you should be joining your finances. And it's, at the end of the day, it's money, man. Money comes, money goes. It shouldn't define your relationship. It's an important aspect, yeah, don't get me wrong, but it's not the most important thing. So yeah, join your finances. It can be a difficult discussion because people don't talk about money too often, but join your finances. There's a lot you can do together than you can do apart, so you might as well make use of that.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I would preferably joint finances if I was getting married, for example, because essentially you are becoming one. I think it allows you to be a lot more open as well. So when you are having those conversations, actually bringing money into those conversations, like, I guess allows you to be vulnerable. And so I think that's good, just because, again, as Zinka mentioned, like, we don't tend to talk about money a lot. Money can be a very taboo subject. But I think at the end of the day, if you're getting married to that person, ideally you would want to talk about everything. So money should probably be one of those things, I think, in our opinion. So I think joining finances just allows you to, I guess, become one. Whether you would keep something separate. So for example, we have separate spending money. It's not too much spending money that we have separate, to be honest.
It's literally a small percentage, probably.
Very small percentage.
Probably it's less. It's not even double digits in terms of percentages.
No,
for both
exactly.
of us, but it's enough. I mean, especially we're still in a pandemic, so there isn't too much to spend your money on anyway. But even when we come out of it, it's just being wise of how you're spending your money. But yeah, you need some individuality.
But yeah, so some things can be separate. Like if I want to go out with my friends, I take that from my own spending account, and the same would be for him if he wanted to go out with his friends.
But if I run out of money, then
we
dip into runs.
We haven't discussed that yet. We've not discussed that yet. But yeah, I think it's important, and I think it just gives that trust and transparency and allows you to be together, but you can also be individual at the same time. And I think that's all we wanted to talk about in this video. So if you did like it, make sure to give it a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments, would you join finances? And if you've already joined finances, how's it going? What are the pros and cons? I do post every Tuesday and Friday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.